It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kim Hammer Show. Thank you for taking time to be with us for the next hour, and we appreciate you joining, listening on 101.1 FM The Answer. If you're listening or watching on Facebook Live, thank you for joining us on Facebook Live. A few public service announcements. First of all, the opinions expressed on the show are mine and mine alone, and the guests of the show are their opinions and theirs alone, so please keep that in consideration if you would. If you'd like to call in today and ask questions, I got two guests on the show that I'll introduce in just a minute. You can call into 501-823-0965, 501-823-0965, or if you want to and you're watching on Facebook, you can go up to the comment section. Ben over here will be watching that. You can email your question in or send in your comment question, and we'll be glad to get it answered on the air. To those that help sponsor the show, make it possible, I want to say thank you to Everett Buick GMC down in Saline County there on I-30 at Alcoa Road. As always, if you're looking for a good used vehicle, in fact, I drove by there today. They had a couple 18-wheelers unloading some new vehicles in there, so they've got a great selection. Their lot is full. If you're looking for a pickup truck, it's a great place to go. They've got a good selection of the new vehicles, whether car or trucks. And as always, they have the pre-owned certified vehicles that you can buy with confidence. Know that you're not buying a piece of junk that's going to fall apart on you as soon as you drive out off the lot. And you can get great service down there as well. As I mentioned before, you go in and you get your vehicle serviced. It's like sitting down in a little coffee shop because you get the access to the coffee and all the other drinks that go with it, as well as in the morning the donuts. So it's a great place to go get your vehicle serviced. Mm-hmm. Then also, I'd like to thank Baxley Phillips Mowdy Real Estate in Central Arkansas. They can take care of all of your real estate needs, whether you're looking to buy or sell, whether it's on the residential, commercial line. They've got an excellent inventory of commercial lots, commercial property. If you're looking to build and start a business, they can take care of you there. And also, they have a rental division. If you're looking to rent your property, you can talk to them. They can help take care of that. Or if you're looking to rent a piece of property, call them, and they can help you locate one as well from their inventory that they have of rental properties. And then Edwards Food Store here in Central Arkansas. I was actually in the one over in Levy Exit this morning, as well as one on Main Street. Great, clean stores, well-stocked, good prices. People are friendly when you go in there. They still check you out. You don't have, you know what kind of bothered me, John, about the big box stores? If I'm standing there at the checkout line and that person's checking me out, or I go to the self-checkout, I pay the same price, but I got to do the work. I haven't figured that one out yet. Well, you want to do that, but you don't have to worry about that at the Edwards Food Store. They'll take care of you all the way from the front door to getting you to your car door, and you can even order online, and they'll have it waiting for you, and you can just pull up to the curb, and they'll take care of you. So Edwards Food Store in Central Arkansas, over there in East Arkansas, it's a great place for you to go shop, take care of your grocery needs. Also, tomorrow at noon, you'll hear the broadcast of the church I pastor, Saline Missionary Baptist Church down in Tull. You can pick up the sermon tomorrow at noon here on the radio station, or it will be on Facebook, but you'll have to go and retrieve it from the archive section because we're going to record it in a little bit, and it'll be playing tomorrow. And then one last thing, we're going to get to our guest, a special shout-out to my wife, our anniversary tomorrow, number 42, I do believe, tomorrow. And so a shout-out to my wife for putting up with me for 42-plus years. All right, now, our guests today on the show are Professor Josh Silverstein, and I will let him identify who he's with and give his public disclaimer when he joins us on the line in a second. And then I think Robert Steinbuch has called in as well. So we've got two law professors, two practicing attorneys that are going to be on the show. And one other thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, is this the one-year anniversary today of the show? Today is the one-year anniversary of the Kim Hammer Show. So Josh and Robert, you get to celebrate. I hope you brought the cake and the gifts, because you get to celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer. Are you guys on the line?
Yes.
I'm here. This is Rob.
All right, very good. Josh, let's start with you. Give your public disclaimer, if you will, and tell who you're a law professor, and just give the public disclaimer, if you would.
Sure. My name is Josh Silverstein, and I'm a professor at the UA Little Rock Bowen School of Law. But all opinions and statements I make today are my own alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of the university where I work. Let me also say congratulations on both anniversaries, the show and the wedding anniversary. That's great news to hear.
Thank you. We'll see if the show's still here in 42 years. I know my wife will still with me. We'll see about the show. But all right. Hey, Robert, you want to introduce yourself and give your public disclaimer?
Absolutely. Well, as you know, Kim, I've been on your show several times. I think Josh has been on a few times as well. And I have the same credentials as Josh. I work over at the Bowen School of Law, and my views are mine and mine alone. And also want to extend my sincere congratulations on both wonderful anniversaries. That's really, they are both terrific accomplishments.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for taking some time out on Saturday to join us. Got a list of topics I want to talk to you about, and I believe it'd be okay to say we've got a good representation of perspectives on various situations represented in this triangle of three here, or any of the questions that may get called in or sent in. But I wanted to go down a list of topics, and from now your backgrounds are both constitutional lawyers. Is that correct?
Well, we both have experience in teaching aspects of constitutional law and having some aspects of our practice in. As it turns out, neither one of us teach the course called constitutional law, although Josh teaches a course, and I'll let him talk more about it, called jurisprudence, which relates to the philosophy underlying constitutional law. Is that right, Josh? Did I express that correctly?
That's exactly right. In the legal philosophy course, I spend roughly a third of the class covering constitutional theory, where we focus on the methods for interpreting the U.S. Constitution, the different approaches. And so that brings in some of the Supreme Court case law, just a little bit, but it's mostly focused on the bigger picture, these different approaches to reading the Constitution.
So let me start off and ask you this question. How is it that you can have the number of judges that we have on the Supreme Court and them come up with different opinions on a particular matter that's presented for them, as far as the court being split on the decision or going one way or the other? Just kind of talk a little bit about what's in the head of a Supreme Court justice that they can't all get it the same way if they've all studied the same way.
So,
Josh, why don't you take that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure, happy to do it. So first things first, the U.S. Supreme Court is unanimous about 50% of the time. Historically, it's closer to 40% now. So we hear about the divided cases, the 5-4s and the 6-3s, but in a very significant percentage of the cases, they decide 9-0. Now, the biggest reason why there are lots of 5-4 and 6-3 decisions is that the Constitution is written in broad, generic language, most of it, and so it's subject to different interpretations. And in addition, the Supreme Court, when they decide cases, those decisions become law themselves, and those cases are often complicated and long. They can be well over 100 pages. And so those cases and their relationship to each other and to the Constitution is subject to debate. So there's lots of room for disagreement. And I think the third thing I would add is the Supreme Court generally, not always, generally takes a case only when the lower courts disagree, when there's already been some dispute between the lower federal courts or the state Supreme Courts or a mix. So the U.S. Supreme Court is dealing with the most challenging issues in American law that have already divided other judges. So sometimes it's even surprising that over 40% of the cases are 9-0 because they're already taking the most difficult cases that divided the lower courts.
Robert?
Can I add one point to that? Yeah, thank you. And that is, Josh, I agree with everything that Josh has said. And I'll say, by the way, as an introduction, and both of us have been on your show before together, and that is that Josh and I perhaps, like the Supreme Court, even though he's liberal and I'm conservative, agree on a lot of things. Because, of course, there are a lot of things that conservatives and liberals can agree on. You know, the sky is blue, up is, north and south is down in terms of a globe. So we agree on a lot of things. I agree with what Josh said, but I do want to add something that I know Josh actually agrees with, and that is judicial philosophy maps what you think the job of a judge is and what methods you use to interpret a constitution, a law, a statute, another case, the method that you choose to do it determines or affects, I should say, the outcome. And so conservatives generally have different judicial philosophies than liberals, and that's why conservative presidents put in conservative judges and vice versa.
All right. So some of the topics I want to get to, we're going to drill down this one a little bit more because it's going to kind of lead into the first one, and that is when it comes to the developing of the minds of those that are going through law school and that ultimately will become attorneys or some will go on to be judges. With regards to the input that they get in the higher ed system, as far as maybe a liberal influence or a conservative influence, or just making sure there's a platform where all voices are heard equally and fairly, whether you agree or disagree, at least the rules of engagement are the same, that everybody gets an equal voice. I want to kind of take the conversation a second toward that. I want to also talk to you all about First Amendment rights with Facebook coming out saying that they're going to start censoring, that's my word, some of the posts that are put on there, and they're going to exercise their rights, although some would call that into question as far as their organization. Do they actually have the right, and are they free from that? And with regards to the media and how the media often only presents one side of the story, or they slant it toward one side instead of being, unbiased and just getting the facts out there. Talk to y'all for a minute about monuments and talk to you about hate crimes. So those are, just so you start getting your wheels turning, those are some of the things I want to talk to you all about. And so back to the Supreme Court and to the judges with regards to what shapes because they're supposed to be impartial, and so we don't have Republican judges or Democrat judges, but sometimes it appears that they rule from the bench in a Republican way or in a liberal way. And so what is it that goes into the teaching that develops the mind of who would become a judge someday, and how does that often affect, or does it affect, their rulings, and what do y'all think? And this time I'm going to start with you, Robert, and then we'll come back to Josh.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that does matter, and is at least implicit in your question, is are students getting a broad perspective, meaning in this context, both conservative and liberal views? And then they can, of course, choose how they want to proceed. And I don't think that is the case. I think that law schools in general, higher education in general, is skewed to the left. A recent study showed that I think 20% of law faculty are conservative, therefore 80% are not. And it seems overwhelmingly unlikely to me, in fact, and indeed the study says the same, that that's a product of random chance, meaning that largely liberal faculties try to reproduce themselves by having largely liberal faculties in the ensuing years, and conservatives are discriminated against in terms of hiring. And it's somewhat ironic in that the left generally looks at outcomes as dispositive. Oh, well, you have this percentage of women or this percentage of a minority in this workplace, that needs to be fixed, says the left. But when it comes to conservatives in higher education, I don't hear that clarion call from the leftists. And the fact is that the difference in perspective is the most important type of diversity. And I do not believe that students are getting an apt conservative perspective, even, by the way, if it was just random chance that brought about a 4-to-1 ratio of liberals to conservatives in legal education. I actually think it's even worse than that. The reasons are. But we need more diversity of thought in legal education in particular, and in higher education in general.
Josh, what do you think?
So I agree with a fair bit of that. I think that most of the research shows that law faculties are heavily tilted to the left, perhaps more so than any other segment of the legal profession. I will say a couple of things about that. There are a lot of liberal law professors that do make a very serious effort to try to present both sides in the classroom. For example, when I teach constitutional theory in my legal philosophy class, I begin with the theories of Robert Bork and Antonin Scalia. So I start with the conservative originalists in order to make sure my students get exposure to those views, and then I defend those views from the criticisms, and then I switch and do the same thing for some liberal theorists and judges. I would also add that so there's a mix of evidence over why there's such a domination of liberals to conservatives in legal education. And I think there's some evidence that there's some discrimination involved. I think it's also possible, though I'm not aware of any studies that back this up specifically, that there's some self-selection. And then another possibility that I've seen is that it may not be direct discrimination. It could be indirect discrimination, with the hiring, focusing on hiring more racial minorities and women faculty. That may skew the hiring for liberal to from conservative to liberal, because as a general rule, racial minorities tend to be more liberal, for example. Now, here's the point where I think Rob and I do pretty strongly disagree. Whatever the source of the disparity, whether it's discrimination directly, whether it's indirectly flowing from affirmative action, or whether it's just random, it's a problem, because a diversity of perspective is critical to the education of students. It's also critical for the professors themselves, because when we're engaging in discussions as a faculty or when we're engaging in research, it's extremely valuable to have alternative perspectives. So I wrote a paper a number of years ago about affirmative action issues, and Rob had some disagreements with my paper, and he gave me outstanding feedback that made the paper much better, and I simply couldn't have produced the quality of work I did if I'd only had liberals read the paper. So I think the area where Rob and I are probably in most agreement is that regardless of the cause of the significant tilt towards liberals, we need to be doing a lot of things to encourage a diversity of opinion, because that facilitates every aspect of the education process.
So when it comes to encouragement, what exactly, and I don't know if you'd be willing to do this, but if you've got that paper, I'd be curious to see it. If you want to email it to me, if you don't mind, I'll put it up on my website. Other people can read it too, if you don't mind. But
happy to do it.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just
Josh
send it.
has it. Yeah.
Yeah, send it on. If you want to send it while you're talking, Ben's at the computer. He can get it up on the website. People can look at it. So with regards to the diversity in the professors that are in the classroom, the process by which the professors are selected by the higher ed, is it something that is, I mean, how do they go about picking it? I would think you would want at least a balance between liberal professors and conservative professors to give full perspective, but what is the hiring process that would assure that could happen, if it could happen at all?
So neither Rob or I are on the hiring committee, but we've both gone through the process. And the way it works is that there's a kind of a clearinghouse. Generally, people interested in being a law professor apply through the Association of American Law Schools. And then they go to Washington, D.C. if they're selected for an interview, and interview with a bunch of different schools potentially. And if the schools like them, they bring them back to campus. And so one thing that could be done as a part of that process would be to look more carefully and focus more carefully on encouraging a diversity of opinion across various different fields. Schools are usually hiring for a particular subject, to teach something that there's a gap in the current curriculum with a retired faculty member or a new field that develops. And we get relatively comprehensive resumes from these candidates. And one thing we could do is look more carefully for candidates who have conservative experience with the work they've done and the writing they've done and the associations they've been with, and try to bring those people into our faculties that to look specifically for those things.
Robert?
I think Josh, his answer is very good, but I think the initial part of his answer highlights a bigger part of the problem. Josh mentioned, perhaps even just as an aside, that neither he nor I are on the hiring committee. I'm a conservative. Josh is a liberal, not a leftist. There is a difference. And he's incredibly committed to the notion of diversity of thought. So guess what? Neither one of us serve on an admissions or a hiring, I should say, committee. And that's part of the problem generally across academia, is that those critical positions that are gatekeeping positions, be it in the admissions committees, be it on the hiring committees, are given to those with the most accepted view, and that's generally in academia, a leftist view. Not only liberal, something further is what I'm distinguishing the two, a leftist view. And just one final thought, Josh aptly described that when he teaches his legal philosophy class, he discusses in great depth the conservative viewpoints. I think Josh is an exception, not the only exception, but an exception to the rule. I think that conservative views are not presented in any way at the same level as liberal views are in, be it judicial philosophy class or legal philosophy classes, or the most theoretical of the law school classes, which is constitutional law.
Okay, tell you what, I got about 3-4 minutes before we get to the bottom of the break, but let me ask you, Josh, you're teaching the philosophy of the, say that again, what you teach. You teach the philosophy of what now?
So I teach a course that is about the philosophy of law generally, but I take about a third of the class to focus specifically on theories of the Constitution. I spend the first 2/3 focusing on theories of law more broadly, but because the Constitution is so important and constitutional theory is the most important subfield, I dig in for a third of the class specifically on what you might call constitutional philosophy.
So what do you base your philosophy on that you are teaching a philosophy class on law?
There are two different aspects to it. First, the most important thing is to cover all of the relevant perspectives. So I did a very significant literature review many years ago around the time I started teaching constitutional theory in my jurisprudence class, and I made sure to select a representative sample of the best work from both sides. With that said, I tell the students at the beginning of that unit that I'm liberal, that I tend to have a judicial philosophy consistent with the liberal judges, and I will try to factor out my bias as I make presentations, but don't be afraid to call me on it. And then throughout the unit, I will say, here's what I agree with, here's what I disagree with, so you understand. And as we work things through, I both try to describe, and then we open things up to discussion. I offer my own views and let the students express their views.
Okay. Tell you what, let me get a shout out to my sponsors. And what I'm going to ask you when we come back, and then we're going to move on to other topics is, you know, and Josh, you have been on my show before, and I like having you on because we have this kind of discussion without, you know, going after each other's jugular. But not everybody is that way. And how can a student stand up to an overbearing professor in a class that may be very much leftist, not just liberal, but leftist liberal, and knowing that they've got to get a grade out of that class without having to eventually be broke down to where they succumb to the pressure? So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to move on to about the First Amendment, hate crimes, talk a little bit about affirmative action because you brought it up, Josh. I also want to ask your opinion about the monuments if we have time. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Everett Buick GMC down in Saline County. They're on I-30. Can't miss them. Got the two big flagpoles on the left-hand side of the interstate when you go on I-30 south. So go down there and see Dwight and Susie and see their staff. They will take really good care of you for a new Buick GMC or certified used vehicle, or their service department for all your real estate needs. Again, here in Central Arkansas, Baxley, Phillips, Mountie, a great place to go. They will take care of you with all of your needs with regards to real estate, where you're looking to buy, sell, rent, or you need to rent, or you got property you want to rent. They'll take care of you all the way top to bottom. Edwards Food Store, great place to shop. As I always tell you, they are convenient, they are clean, and they are customer friendly. So there's your 3 C's, okay? and you can get good quality service and good quality food at good competitive prices from them. You're listening to the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer. Come on back after the break, and we'll be joined by Robert Steinbuch and also Josh from the Professors Law School.
This weekend, the Saline County Gun and Knife Show will be held at the Benton Event Center like no other show, with over 280 tables of firearms, knives, and ammo, door prizes, and a drawing for a rifle, boats, trucks, and food out front. So come out to the Saline County Gun and Knife Show this Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 9 to 4 at the Benton Event Center. $10 adults, age 11 to 15, $5, and age 10 and under are free. Discounts for military and police. Sponsored by Kerry Murphy Promotions, Big Jake's Tire, and Arkansas Marine.
Hey, it's Dave Ellswick. I'll be heading out to the Republican National Convention in August on the 24th, and we want your business to be included with us. All you have to do is to call 501-404-6545, and your business can be part of all the excitement of the renomination of Donald Trump for the Republican Party for president. We'll be there. We'll give you everything that's happening, every moment that it's going on, right here on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
This is good news, maybe exactly when you need it to. Right now, MediShare is waiving their new member fees. This could save you money on top of all that you'll save each month by becoming a member of MediShare. So many people are looking for a healthcare solution right now, seeing the cost of COBRA plans, for instance, and MediShare is the affordable alternative to health insurance. The typical family saves $500 a month, but you might save even more. MediShare is a Christian community that shares each other's healthcare costs, and because of the current economic situation, they're making it easier than ever. Apply by June 30th. You can save an additional $170 on your first month. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Just tell them the promo code SHARE to receive your additional savings. Maybe now is the time to make the switch, like more than 400,000 people already have, and start saving. Here it is. Call 855-BIBLE-11. That's 855-BIBLE-11. 855-BIBLE-11.
When Doug Moore at Join Doug Now talks to people about health insurance, they tell him they worry about having quality health insurance and their finances. Doug knows he'll help with both. Hi, Mike Gallagher here. People are paying huge deductibles and premiums with Obamacare, but you can get a health plan with exclusive benefits and features. There are no deadlines. Enroll anytime. Plans include coverage for COVID-19 testing and medical expenses. If you're under 65 and in decent health, you, your family, or business buys your own health insurance, or you're paying ridiculous COBRA rates that you're going to have to change anyway. Call Doug Moore at Join Doug Now. They help folks buy health plans with flexible acceptance and rates 30 to 60% lower with no deductibles or copays. Compare your coverage to what Doug Moore at Join Doug Now can offer. This is the best non-Obamacare plan available today. Call 800-488-4939. That's 800-488-4939, or go to joindougnow.com. That's joindougnow.com. A quality plan managed and chosen by you, not the government.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer, watching on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us today. Real quick shout out to my sponsors, Everett Buick GMC down in Saline County, there I-30 Alcoa Road. Also Baxley Phillips Mounty Real Estate for all your Central Arkansas real estate needs. You can find them down at Spring Hill Road and Highway 5, and also Edward Food Stores. So appreciate all those that help make this show possible. Again, I want to remind you that the opinions expressed on the Kim Hammer Show are mine and mine alone, and that of my guest. Those are their opinions and their alone as well. Joining us today is Professor Joshua Silverstein from the Bowen Law School, although his opinions are his and his alone personally, and Robert Steinbuch, who also teaches over at the Bowen School of Law, both of them law professors. And so, gentlemen, thank you again for taking some time out on Saturday to be on the Kim Hammer Show. All right, Josh, let's pick up with you with regards to the question I left off at the top of the hour. What about if you have an overbearing professor? And let me just say this, too. I could imagine in certain circumstances you might have a really conservative, overbearing law professor as well, so it could cut both ways. But according to the rumor mill, it seems like the liberal ones are a little bit more overbearing. And how prevalent is that in the classroom in the law schools? Maybe not yours alone, but, you know, just your opinion across the nation. And how much is that influencing the mindset that is making its way to the bench when judges have to hear cases?
I think it is not that prevalent, but I think it is too prevalent, because if it happens at all, that's a serious problem. When I took constitutional law in law school myself, the professor was fair and open-minded, but the entire approach to the course focused on the liberal perspective to constitutional law. And even as a liberal, that was frustrating because I wanted to learn both sides, and I had to go do extra reading on my own. So there are a couple of things a student can do. One, when it's not so bad, do what I did. Do some reading on your own to fill in the gaps that are missing in class. Another is to complain, to go to the administration, to go to aligned student organizations like the Federalist Society, which is the conservative student and lawyer organization, or the Young Republicans. And some students have even gone so far as to bring litigation over conservative bias liberal bias in higher education. So, but I think the most important thing is to, when it happens, to get it out there so people know it's happening and so corrective measures can be taken. Again, I don't think it's that big a problem in terms of the kind of overbearing happenings, but it does happen way too much. And what is more common is simply the content is skewed in favor of one perspective, and that hurts the education process. And that's one reason why Rob and I are always together talking about the importance of getting a diversity of opinion in the classroom.
Robert, any opinion?
I largely agree with Josh, and I would just add to say that while I probably think there may be slightly more overbearing, it's hard to get an exact sense as to how it is and what Josh believes it is, overbearing leftist professors, you're teaching these students mostly stuff they don't know. And so if you're teaching a French class, you're not going to walk away learning Spanish. And so if you teach a bunch of students a bunch of liberal ideas, even if they have an interest and some passing knowledge of conservative ideas, they're not going to be able to augment that or develop it even. And that's the issue. So whether the professors are overbearing, and some can be, the bigger issue is simply the lack of sufficient conservative perspective in higher education and in law school.
All right. Let's move on to a different topic. Facebook came out yesterday, I think it was, or was on the news this morning, I heard, as far as they're going to eliminate some posts based on what their view is that a political post where maybe somebody has stepped over the line that they have drawn. Do they have that right to do that? What gives them that right to do that, given them the fact that they have such a large public platform that people have become so heavily dependent upon? And let's start off with that question. Let me go to you first, Robert, and then I've got a follow-up when we get done.
Sure. Well, it is actually a complicated question because, as you well know, it's a private entity, and we as conservatives generally respect the notion that private entities are entitled to do anything that they want to do, obviously outside of breaking the law. And so the question then devolves to what law would they be breaking? And there is, of course, no First Amendment for a private entity. However, one could argue that it's become so big that it's a public utility and should be subject to certain laws that governmental entities generally are subject to. And that's difficult. I can't give you a clear answer on that. Separately, but on this broader notion, places like Facebook have generally been immune from certain types of private lawsuits for like defamation because they were simply content providers. Once they start filtering the content, they expose themselves to greater liability for a lawsuit. So they may actually be going into territory that they don't want to go in terms of lawsuits. So I don't have a clear answer for you on that.
You got anything to contribute there, Josh?
Just two things, I think. The first is I just want to highlight Rob's very important point that constitutional rights are rights to protect you against the government, not private parties. So there's no First Amendment right against another private citizen. There's one exception for the 13th Amendment, but setting aside the 13th Amendment, which governs slavery, all of the other constitutional rights only protect citizens against the government. The second thing I want to add is that Facebook has its own free speech rights. And so the courts have become a little bit more skeptical recently over requiring even public entities that like Facebook, that have become these large platforms, to have balance when that could impact their own First Amendment rights. So they might be treated sometimes like a TV station, where for a long time the court required fairness, but that's become less clear whether that's even now allowed given the changes in First Amendment doctrine. So Rob is right. This is a big legal morass. There would have to be legislation adopted to force Facebook to be more neutral, but that legislation itself might not be constitutional, and of course it would depend on the scope of the legislation.
What about the media? I mean, on Facebook, it doesn't cost me anything. It costs somebody something because, they buy the ads. But as a consumer or member of the public, it doesn't cost me anything to pull up Facebook and look at it. So it's really my choice. If I want to support them by giving attention to them or giving time to them, that's my choice. I know a lot of people have, tuned off because they don't like some of the policies that we're talking about as far as it limiting and based on what you just said a minute ago, Josh, it's almost like they want their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do, but they don't want to let us do whatever we want to do, and that creates a conflict. But what about with regards to the media and dealing with the media who maybe I purchase a subscription to a newspaper and over time I realize that they have been writing a slanted version and it's not, and I guess who controls the definition of news under which they present their articles that are supposed to be newsworthy? And how can I as a consumer be able to be protected if I feel that the media outlet that I'm having to pay for is not actually producing unbiased factual news? Is there any recourse for me as a consumer without getting, or how do we balance that against the First Amendment right?
Well, once again, the press are private entities. And so if the press wants to present the news in a particular slant or perspective, that's up to them. And there's a direct freedom of the press clause in the First Amendment that lets them do that. I tend to be of the view that the press shouldn't try to be unbiased. I prefer the European model to journalism, where each news outlet lets you know what their perspective is, and then what you try and do is purchase or read, if it's free, different news organizations that from the right and from the left. One of my favorite places to get my news is the website Real Clear Politics, which I have no affiliation with, because they aggregate many of the best liberal and conservative sources all in one place. And so you can get multiple articles on major current event topics from both the left and the right. And so the primary recourse for consumers is, if you don't like the product you're receiving, go get another product and either discontinue the current product or get them both so you get both sides. I think bias in the media is inevitable, and it's better for consumers to simply try to get a diversity of opinion from different sources. My favorite news source is The Economist magazine from London, and they generally lean conservative, and then I read some other sources to get liberal opinion to balance it.
Rob?
That, of course, as conservatives, we generally believe in the marketplace, and so the marketplace can offer different products to different people. With that said, there are limits, in particular the limits to free speech, as you well know, and the press has historically, since the New York Times v. Sullivan case, been given a free hand in writing virtually anything, and we well know that defamation is a cause of action that is legal under the First Amendment, meaning while you have a right to speak, you don't have a right to defame someone. And, of course, you're well aware that you introduced a bill, and I helped you on it, that would have dealt with that in Arkansas by making it a little bit more difficult for media outlets to violate one's rights when it comes to defamation. We weren't successful when we tried that in the last session, but of course, we have future sessions to try again. So I think that's one way that we can massage that difficulty in terms of the media's seeming free ability to do whatever they want. There should be some constraints, and one that well exists in the law now is the constraint of defamation, and creating a statute, as you tried to do, regarding false light, as it was called, that deals with slightly different circumstances, still satisfies, in my mind, and the minds of many other legal scholars, in fact, the First Amendment, while ensuring or at least enhancing individuals' rights against being defamed, or the equivalent.
Right. So, and I mean, the big deal on that is that if I purchase a product, I expect to purchase that product with the intent, and maybe I'm just a little bit too naive, and we'll move on after this one. If I step up to the checkout counter and I see a tabloid and it's got somebody from Mars having a baby with somebody on Earth, I'm probably going to know when I buy that that's a little bit on the, on the false news side. But if I pick up a paper that has the title of news in it and I purchase that paper, I expect that paper has done its job to present the news in as unbiased a way as possible for the purpose of just getting the facts out there. And after a while, when you realize that media outlet, and this could even apply to, what's put out over the airways, although, if I'm subscribing to a cable package and I'm supporting maybe one or two shows on there that, do not present it in a fair way, and they're getting a portion of the revenue as a result of that, I feel as a consumer that I have either been misled or that I've been sold a product that is inferior because it does not contain what I would expect to be 100% truth. And maybe that's too naive or expecting too much. Going to Josh's point, if I determine that, then cancel that subscription. But in the case of like a cable package where I have to take this package because I have no other choice, then I either have to abandon that and go select from another process. And I guess that's the one thing that kind of rubs me raw is if people present this as being facts and you find out over a period of time it's not, then what recourse do I have as a consumer having had my good faith violated? What I hear y'all saying is just go find a different product. Is that pretty much the long and short of it?
I think so.
Go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry, Josh. You should have.
I think so. And I'll give you another example. When major current events happen, I like to move back and forth between MSNBC and Fox and try to watch both, because MSNBC has this rock-solid liberal perspective, and Fox generally has a rock-solid conservative perspective. And in trying to say we're just going to give you the facts, the problem is there's both disagreement about the facts, and because of time constraints and space constraints, no news source, whether print or electronic, is going to give you the exact same facts. They are going to have to make a decision about which facts are important. And those decisions will always be influenced by their perspective. And so I think what the smart consumer of news does is try to make sure they get a diversity of opinion, even a diversity of the news sources that are trying to just give you the facts, because they're never going to be able to just give you the facts. They're going to have to decide in their news sources which facts are most important, which should be emphasized. And the only way to counter that is to get a diversity of opinion so you can then decide for yourself what's most significant or most correct.
All right. Rob, any parting thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Just a quick one. You recall in the hearing on your bill, in fact, we brought out the story about the Catholic boys in Washington, D.C. who were defamed by and defame is a general term. It covers false light. Were defamed by the media, and your bill was designed to address that. And there were some good folks in the media, really good folks, who said, well, I think the existing law covers that. And if I recall correctly, the trial court threw out the case, but the appellate court reinstated it. So in the end, it looks like that Catholic boy might get the recovery. Maybe he settled already. I didn't follow it too closely. But the point is that at least one of those two courts said he didn't have a right to move ahead. And so your bill was designed to say, listen, this shouldn't be so complicated. That was such a clear case. Even at the end of the day, if he won, it took too much work. The law should be more in favor of protecting people from being defamed than it is today.
All right, let's talk about how about affirmative action? You brought that up a while ago. Josh, what was your position in your paper that you took, and just kind of give a summary view of what it was that you gave from a liberal perspective?
I wanted to present a theory of affirmative action grounded in what philosophers call corrective justice. And corrective justice is simply a fancy way of saying when something goes wrong, when someone is injured, when their property is stolen, when there's a car accident, when a contract is breached, you can sue for recovery of your injury. And I tried to show how a broad understanding of corrective justice could justify or be one justification among many for affirmative action, that affirmative action is partly about trying to correct for the history of slavery and Jim Crow in the United States. And there are lots of disagreements about that. There are conservatives who think that affirmative action is too attenuated from that history to be considered a fair remedy. And there's even disputes among liberals about whether corrective justice is the best or even that strong of a justification for affirmative action. So when I circulated the paper to colleagues, including Rob, I got really good feedback from both conservatives and liberals. My brother's a liberal philosophy professor. He doesn't really like the corrective justice defense of affirmative action. And so he pushed me really hard on that point, and I got good feedback from him as well. And that was just another example of why it's important to have a diversity of opinion, because I never could have gotten the same kind of feedback if I hadn't had it read by people with all these different perspectives.
Robert?
Here's the interesting thing about affirmative action. Affirmative action has always been said to be the following. When you have two essentially equal candidates, you put your thumb on the scale a little bit to help out the minority, because when we measure the quality of a candidate, be it for admission to law school or elsewhere, or for hiring for a job, be it a law school or elsewhere, there's some lack of perfect definition that we're able to judge these things. And so we need to account for that, and we should also account for the fact that the person who's the minority may have not had all of the opportunities, and therefore there's a hidden potential that will be revealed upon admission or hiring. So that's an interesting theory and has largely nothing to do with what affirmative action is in today's world. Affirmative action is not a thumb on the scale. It's a cinder block on the scale. We routinely in higher education admit minorities with dramatically lower metrics than, on average, than comparable whites. And the result is, for example, in law schools across this country, that minorities pass the bar at an appreciably lower rate than whites. And so it's interesting to have a conversation about affirmative action and what the moral justifications may be for affirmative action. But to me, the more practical and realistic conversation is, what do we mean by affirmative action? And what we mean by affirmative action in today's day, as is evidenced by the practice, is largely some form of fuzzy racial quotas.
Can I add a couple of comments on that, Kim?
Sure, go ahead.
So two things. First, Rob is one of the leading scholars in the entire country on affirmative action in admissions. He's written multiple papers on this, and his research, both data and interpretive arguments about that data, have really helped advance the discussion within legal education, and I think the work that he has done has also influenced people thinking beyond legal education. And that, again, highlights the importance of having conservative perspectives in higher education generally, because there are not a lot of people doing that work. And if Rob weren't doing it, there'd be a lot of information that we wouldn't be getting. And secondly, I think that Rob makes a really important point, that there's a difference between the way affirmative action operates in theory, in the papers that people like me write, and the way it operates in practice. And unfortunately, while I'm a strong defender of affirmative action in theory, some of the ways affirmative action is practiced, I think, is both morally unjustifiable and arguably unconstitutional. When state actors are employing affirmative action, we're governed by the U.S. Constitution. And sometimes the way affirmative action is used in higher education probably violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. And so regardless of the persuasiveness of my justification of affirmative action in theory, which reasonable minds can fight about, the way it's practiced sometimes cannot be justified by my theory and may even be illegal.
So is affirmative action, based on what you just said, because this is layman, and obviously I don't have a law degree, but here's the layman. In the context of allocation of resources of employment, the practice or policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups known to have been discriminated against previously, is affirmative action as it is applied today counterproductive to what the original intent was, because it has been and is being misused, misconstrued in order to achieve objectives that were not part of the original intent?
That's an open empirical question, and I think Rob makes a lot of good arguments that it's doing more harm than good. But there are even people who say it does more harm than good when practiced properly, and that was one of the objections I addressed in my paper. I disagree with that perspective, but these are open debates with lots of arguments and evidence, and people like Rob are continuing to produce evidence that's helping to advance these discussions and debates.
So let me give you a bombshell. Should we do away with affirmative action and just let it be that everybody gets what they get on the merits of their abilities, if y'all care to express an opinion at all?
I still think the answer is no, that we shouldn't. But I think, again, reasonable minds can differ on this. And I will add one other point, that based on the Supreme Court's recent interpretation of Title VII in the sexual orientation and transgender case a week or two ago, that interpretation of Title VII may lead to the outlawing of affirmative action by our employment discrimination statutes in all private contexts. So regardless of what we actually think, don't be surprised if Title VII is eventually found to bar affirmative action generally.
Rob, you got 1 minute.
Yeah, as I described before, if we're talking about how affirmative action is actually being implemented, I do think it generally causes more harm than good, and that is to both the groups to whom it's supposed to be helping, as well as to other people. And so as such, I think, look, California, 25 years ago, adopted Prop 309, I don't remember the number, I think it's 309, that said no race-based hiring, no race-based admissions, and they have yet to fall off the side of the country. So I think that one can adopt a system based much more on merit than what has effectively become often racial quotas, and that's generally a better way to go.
All right, let me ask y'all if you'd be willing to come back on the show maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. I think we didn't get to some of our topics, but I enjoy the conversation, and it's enjoyable to have a liberal perspective and a conservative perspective and be able to have a rational conversation around things. So if y'all are willing, I'll get you to come back on in a couple of weeks. But I appreciate y'all being on today. My guest today has been Professor Joshua Silverstein with the Bowen School of Law. However, his opinions are his and his alone as expressed today. And then also I've had Robert Steinbuch, who is also a professor at the Bowen School of Law. And again, his opinions are his and his alone as expressed on the show today. I appreciate very much those gentlemen being on. Thank you all for being on the Kim Hammer Show or listening to the Kim Hammer Show today or watching on Facebook. Today is a 1-year anniversary. Plan on getting a few more in. And want to say happy anniversary to my wife. We'll celebrate, I think, 42. I'll find out if I'm wrong on that. 42 come Monday. the 29th. And so appreciate and love her for sticking up with me and sticking out with me for this many years. Tomorrow at noon here on 101.1, you can join me. I'll be delivering a message to the church that I pastor, Saline Missionary Baptist Church. We are open having worship services, but we're continuing to do this to make it beneficial to the public that like to listen. And we will be back Facebook Live. We have purchased the equipment. Give us 2 or 3 weeks to get everything set up and going, and we'll let you know. You've been listening to Kim and Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer. I hope you have a great rest of the Saturday. Thank you to Everett, Buick GMC, down Saline County, Baxley Phillips, Mowdy Real Estate, in Saline County, Central Arkansas, Edward Food Stores. Y'all have a great day.
101.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM, The Answer.